Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I'm going to share with you all of the books that I read during the month of September. Okay, so during the month of September, I was able to read 9 books, which I am really happy with because it was our first month homeschooling, and it was quite a doozy of a month. Homeschooling is very time consuming when you're doing it for 3 kids. And so, yeah, not a whole lot of extra time to read this month, but we did get 9 books read. So we're calling that good. Of those 9 books, I had 4 middle grade, 1 young adult, and 4 adult books, which is great. I had 6 audiobooks and 3 print books, which that seems about right these days. And I had 6 owned books and 3 library books, which is really great. So none were graphic novels, no graphic novels this month. I did have 4 5-star reads, 4 4-star reads, and 1 2-star read. So that's really fantastic. So I'm not going to go in any particular order. I'm just probably going to go in the order that they are on my list, which is the order I read them, and talk about them and kind of get into some of the nitty-gritty of this list. So without further ado, the first book that I read this month was Majesty by Katharine McGee. This is the sequel to the American Royals. I had to think about it. The American Royals, which came out last year, I believe. But this is a series, duology. I don't know if it's just a duology or if there's going to be more or not. But it is about what would have happened if George Washington would have been a king instead of a president, if the United States would have been a monarchy instead of a democracy. So, and kind of modern day, what that would look like, and following the royal family in America, modern day, if that all would have happened. I really loved the first book. It was just kind of a guilty pleasure almost kind of book for me, and I felt the exact same way with the second book. I really, really loved this book. I thought that it hit a lot of really good points. The characters that needed more fleshing out, I felt like got it. I really liked the trajectory of a lot of the things and who people ended up with and who they didn't. I really enjoyed it. So I ended up giving it 5 stars because I liked it. Do I need another reason? So, all right, after that, I read, let me find it. I actually have this one. It's at the bottom of my stack. Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. I talk about this in my 5-star predictions wrap up that already went up. But this is one that I ended up giving 4.5 stars to. I really, really enjoyed it. This is a book about a woman in the 1970s who's pregnant and finds out that her child has a heart defect, and then her brother-in-law comes to her and is like, hey, I'm actually here from like 2015 or 2007 or something like that, and I can time travel. I know how to do it. I could send you into the future so you could get surgery in utero for your baby so we can save your baby. And that's kind of what it's about. It was so good. The only reason this didn't get a full 5 stars for me, I'm sorry, you can totally hear my kids being loud, but that's just life. So we're just going to power through. But the only reason this didn't get 5 stars is because there were a couple of sections where it just kind of lost believability for me as far as people's reactions to things, how they would handle situations, that sort of thing. So 4.5 stars, really, really great book. The next one that I read was an audiobook I listened to, and this was definitely one that everybody was reading, so I felt like I needed to read it too, and that is The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi, and I loved this book. This is another 5-star read for me. Of all the like self-help books that I have read this year, this is probably my favorite because the way that Kendra Adachi handles things, it's the lazy way to handle things. It's basically figure out what matters to you, not what matters to society, not what matters to the world around you, what matters to you, and learn how to tackle that and let go of the things that don't really matter. And I really, really love that philosophy because it just allows you to let go of that pressure that society puts on you to do things a certain way or to have your house look a certain way, and just let it go and really focus on what's the most important thing, which most of the time is relationship. And so, yeah, loved everything about this book. I actually want to purchase this book because I want to have it as a resource in my home. Loved it. And I know that she has a podcast too. I have never listened to her podcast, but I know it's out there for people to listen to if you're interested. So, all right, after that, I read a middle grade novel, if I can find it. Where did it go? There it is. Middle grade novel, and I read Wish by Barbara O'Connor. I read this because my fourth grader, this is her assigned like reading for her to read each day. She reads a little bit of it each day, and I had never actually read it. So I listened to it really quick just so that I knew what to be asking her, what to be expecting from her as she's giving me her summaries and things like that. This is about a little girl, Charlie, I believe is her name. Yeah, and she has gone to live with her aunt and uncle who she's never met. She really doesn't know them. And while she's there, she runs into a dog that she has, a stray dog that she has decided she wants to try to catch and tame. I don't know. She wants it to be her pet dog. And so we just kind of get to learn about Charlie and why she's a little rough around the edges and a little bit about her family. And yeah, really enjoyed this. Thought it was great. Gave it 4 stars. All right. And then I read another middle grade novel, Jefferson's Sons by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This is one that I had just picked up because it was by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. She wrote The War That Saved My Life and The War I Finally Won, which I loved. And I saw that this one was by her too. I didn't really know what it was about, and then read the back of it and realized it is about Thomas Jefferson's sons that he had with his slave, Sally Hemings. It's told from the point of view of 2 of the different sons and then another slave boy. So we get 3 different points of view, but they're not alternating. So it's like one son, and then the second part of the book is the other son, and then the last part of the book is their friend that is another slave on the Monticello plantation. This was so good, you guys. The end of this book had me like sobbing and like wanting to throw up all at the same time because it was like horrifying and sad, but it was so good. It was so well done. It's such an important story that needs to be told. Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, and he did not free them, and he did not, he wanted to put in the Constitution to abolish slavery, but he owned slaves, and when he died, like, what happened to them? Hint, spoiler alert, they were not just freed when he died. A lot of people think like, yeah, he had slaves, but he freed them when he died. No, he did not. And so this goes into that and kind of how these boys felt about their father who owned slaves. And you get it's just it's so good. Everybody needs to read this. I don't care if you're middle grade, if you're adult, whatever. This is written for middle grade. I would say this is like 6th, 7th grade middle grade, definitely not young middle grade, just because there is talk about like mama goes to Master Jefferson's room every night, hint hint, like we get a lot of that, but there's no like nothing besides that. It's just trying to have those conversations with kids. I don't feel it's really appropriate, but you choose whatever you want to do with your own kids is fine. Anyway, that was kind of a tangent. Adults though, read this book. It is so good. I want everybody to read that because I want to talk with everybody about it because it touched me in a way that I didn't know I needed. And the reason that I picked this up was because I was studying kind of about the American Revolution and the U.S. founding fathers and government with my kids. And so I was kind of in that mindset. I actually was going to read this to see if it was something I could hand my kids. It's not quite yet, but I'm still so glad I read it. All right. That was 5 stars, in case I didn't say that. Oh, so good. All right. And then I finally, guys, guess what I finally read? It's not Pride and Prejudice. But I did finally read To Kill a Mockingbird. I had never read this before. this was never even required reading in school for us. Like, this was never even a suggested read for me in school. So I just totally missed that boat and had never read this. And I finally have read this now. So I feel like I am accomplished now. Now I just need to read Pride and Prejudice, and then I'll feel better about myself as a reader. But finally read To Kill a Mockingbird. I really, really enjoyed it. I will say, I know a lot of people say that this is their favorite book ever. You know, it was not that for me. This was a 4-star read for me. I felt the first part of this book was very, very slow. There was a lot in this book that was completely irrelevant. But once we get into the like meat of the book, this follows a little Girl Scout and her father, who is an attorney, a defense attorney for a black man who has been accused of raping a white woman. And it's set in the 30s, I believe. So yeah, and you can imagine how that all goes in the South. It's set in Alabama, I think. But once we get into like the trial and the meat of what was happening, I really enjoyed it. I loved the end of this book so much, but the first half of it to me was so slow and just kind of monotonous, and it really drug. But I'm still glad I read it, and I gave it 4 stars. So yay for me, got that one checked off the list. All right, the next thing I read was a cover by borrow from the library for me, and this is Tree Girl by T.A. Barron. My kids and I, for science this month, we are studying trees, and so I had just gone on to the library website and looked up tree books for kids and pretty much put on hold whatever I thought looked interesting. I did not realize that this was a chapter book when I borrowed it. I thought it was just a picture book because I wasn't paying attention. And I wasn't reading synopsises. It was just, oh, that cover looks pretty. That topic looks good. That looks like it might be something. And I thought that this was a picture book. It is not. It's a short chapter book. And so I just wanted to read it to see what it was about, to see if it's something that we might use as a read aloud during our tree unit. I really, really like this. This was very different. It is fantasy-esque. It follows a little girl, Rowana, who is being kept in this cottage on the sea with who she calls Master, but it's this elderly man that has taken her in, and he has told her not to go in the forest. Don't look at the forest. Don't entertain thoughts of the forest. The forest is evil. There are ghouls in the forest. You don't want to go there. And so, of course, because she is a child, she wants to go in the forest. And so she starts exploring the forest a little bit at a time, and it's really good. I really, really like this. This definitely, from a Christian perspective, kind of dabbles in more mystic things that I don't know quite how I feel about it yet, but it didn't bother me enough to really deter me from reading it. I don't know how I would feel about my kids reading it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of dabbles in that mystic, magical element that isn't so fantastical that it's outrageous. So I don't know. But I ended up giving it 4 stars because I just really, really enjoyed it, and I thought it was sweet, and I loved the use of nature in this. It talks about different types of trees and different plants and what they're used for, and their strengths and their weaknesses and their usefulness, and I thought that was fantastic for a kid's book that is not a nonfiction book. So yeah, loved that one. That was 4 stars. And then earlier this week I'm filming this on the 30th. So Monday, we finally finished our first read aloud of the school year. And we had started with the Wingfeather Saga book 1, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. We picked this up because so many people I've seen raved about it and loved this book, loved the series so much. It is written by a Christian music artist, and so I thought it would just be great. It's a fantasy book. My kids were excited about it. You guys, I did not like this book. Like, this was a 2-star book for me. it was everything I could do to make myself finish reading this to my kids. Finally, at the end, like I told my kids, I was like, okay, sit down, strap in, we're finishing this tonight because I am done reading this book. I am so over it. I just did not. I didn't like it, especially for a read aloud, and I should have known ahead of time. But this book has a lot of made up words in it. So, like, instead of saying potatoes, they say totatoes, or onions are grunions? I don't even know. But they make up words for things, and then there's all the different creatures that have different words. The names of the characters can be hard to pronounce. It was just bizarre. It was very hard to read aloud. There's footnotes which totally throw off the like read aloud like pace and like getting into it, because then you get this footnote. At a certain point, I just started skipping all the footnotes because it was becoming too much. My kids weren't really getting it. And then on top of that, this book starts off like really funny, and it's, you know, a good sense of humor and very like appropriate for kids. And then towards the end, when all the action, it's a war story, but all the action starts happening and people are cutting people in half, and there's blood flying everywhere and people are getting stabbed, and it's very, very violent. And it kind of catches you off guard initially because it's just like that. It switches and it becomes extremely violent, and like my kids even were like, whoa, what just happened? I don't know if I want to finish reading this because it's so violent. And it didn't match with the first part of the book that was really lighthearted. For an adult reader, I felt like it was parts of it were predictable. I didn't predict all of the end of it. There were definitely some good like twists and stuff in it, but parts of it were predictable. There was a lot of convenience in it. The flow was a little off. Like, I don't know. It was not for me. I did not like it. My kids have expressed a little bit of interest in finishing the series. It's a 4-book series, and I know that Andrew Peterson has on his Facebook page, he reads these aloud. Like, he has Facebook videos of him reading his books out loud, and so I may pull those up and let them listen to the books out loud. The older girls, if they're interested in it. My younger one was really bored by this. And that was my own fault for not reading it before I read it with the kids. So that was kind of the wah-wah of the month. But then I ended on a high note because last night I finally finished The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton, and this gets all the stars in the world. 5 stars, 10 stars, a million stars. This book was so fantastic. This is another one that I talk about in my 5-star predictions wrap up. Anthony Ray Hinton was a client of Bryan Stevenson, who wrote Just Mercy, which I read last year. And this is his story about his time that he spent on death row, which was 30 years that he spent on death row for a crime that he did not commit. He was completely innocent, and very clearly innocent. And was put on death row because why not? And this is just the story about how he got there, his time that he spent there, how he met Bryan Stevenson, how Bryan Stevenson helped him, how he got out, his life since, like just his attitude about everything. And you guys, like his philosophy of life is just to love people, and I love that. This story is so good in illustrating why it's so important to treat people with respect, even when you're in hard times and even when you're stuck in a hard place. And it was so good. I loved it so much. So glad I read it. Everybody needs to read it. That's all I have to say about that. So that was 5 stars also. All right, so that's it. Those were the 9 books that I read during the month of September. If you have heard of any of these, if you have comments about any of these, I would love to hear those down below. I'd also love to hear what you read in September that you were really excited about, that you loved. And yeah, I think that's going to do it for me today. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.